whoa, bear. Whoa! Hey! Oh, did you hear?
Yeah.
I'm trying to bite it out. Oh my god, it's screaming.
You expect a quiet weekend off the grid, but the deep woods have a way of changing the rules. An ordinary camping encounter can instantly turn into a desperate fight for survival. When the shadows finally start moving, what exactly are you facing? A group of snowmobile riders came across a large bison standing directly in their path. What followed was captured on camera and lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough. The riders spotted the bison blocking their route and slowed down. They tried moving around it from the side, staying cautious and keeping their distance. For a moment, it looked like they would pass without issue. Then the bison's posture shifted. It charged, fast and without much warning. Just as suddenly, it stopped. The riders used that window to pull away and put space between themselves and the animal. They got out without injury. Bison charges can stop as fast as they start, and no one knows exactly what triggers the cutoff. What do you think made it back off when it did? This chilling clip begins with a group of men making their way back to their canoe, passing the time by playing a word game to keep themselves entertained. As the game continues, the camera suddenly captures a glimpse of an unexpected stalker.
That's pretty good already, I guess. Not bad. Whoa, bear. Whoa! Hey!
They narrowly dodge the bear as it advances, leading to a tense standoff where the animal refuses to back down. Despite their yelling, waving their arms, and even stepping toward it, the predator holds its ground.
Hey, yeah, you go, bear. You go. Yeah, that's right.
Fortunately, the sticks they armed themselves with were enough to keep the animal at bay, giving them the chance to reach their canoe safely, with no injuries from the encounter. A TikTok creator known as Big Dre 83 was streaming live from a rural property scattered with old scrap vehicles and open dirt roads. The stream was relaxed. Big D Ray 83 was on camera, talking casually with someone nearby.
That's an old motor right there.
Nah, them trash.
Then a dark shape moved across the dirt road in the background. It crossed quickly, fast enough that it almost didn't register. Both the streamer and the people around him reacted immediately, shouting and pointing toward the road. When the camera turned to focus on that area, nothing was there.
That's an old motor right there.
Nah, them trash.
Viewers who caught it started looking for explanations. Some suggested it could have been a vehicle far off in the distance, but it was too small and too upright to be any normal car or bike. Cameras can distort shapes depending on distance and lighting, but that doesn't always account for everything the eye catches in the frame. What do you think crossed that road? A 9-year-old girl named Charlotte was on a family camping trip at Morrow Lake State Park in upstate New York when she disappeared. One moment she was riding her bike around the campground. The next, she was gone. Her disappearance triggered a massive search. Hundreds of rescuers were involved, and the case drew national attention. 47 hours later, Charlotte was found alive inside a camper belonging to a man named Craig Ross Jr., who had taken her from the park. She was rescued safely. What followed was remarkable. Despite everything she had endured, Charlotte was able to speak clearly and calmly with investigators. She described what happened in enough detail to help build a strong case. In court, that evidence mattered. Craig Ross Jr. later accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 47 years to life in prison. Her family has called her incredibly brave, not just for surviving, but for helping ensure he could never hurt another child again. Some survivors find a way to stay focused even under the worst circumstances, and that clarity can make all the difference in what happens after. What do you think gave Charlotte the strength to speak up the way she did? A man was walking home late at night and chose to cut through a narrow path running alongside a cassava plantation. The route crossed a small bridge, slightly unstable, but one he had used before without any problems. This time felt different. Somewhere in the middle of the crossing, an uneasy feeling started to build.
Feeling ko kabong ko di sini nggak mau lama-lama. Takut anjir. Lama-lama
He couldn't explain it, but he trusted it enough to turn back. That's when he saw something near a cluster of bamboo trees. A white figure was standing there, appearing to hover just above the ground. He backed away immediately, still recording as he moved. The footage cuts off shortly after. What's visible on camera is difficult to explain cleanly. Light and shadow can account for a lot, but not always everything in the frame. What do you think he actually saw that night? Two hikers were camping in the San Gabriel Mountains and decided to explore the area before nightfall. At first, everything felt normal, but as they went deeper into the woods, both started feeling uneasy. At a nearby creek, they noticed a heavy, musky smell. A little further in, they found large tree trunks snapped in half, not cut, not naturally broken, but twisted apart with force.
Yeah.
Then rocks started flying toward them from up the hillside. No one was visible. They watched the rocks land nearby and immediately backed away, convinced something in those woods didn't want them there. Some think it was a person scaring them off. Others say the smell, the broken trees, and the thrown rocks match patterns tied to Bigfoot encounters. What do you think was out there with them? On April 6, 2026, a family taking part in an Easter egg hunt at a public park in Long Beach, California, made a disturbing discovery. Near Forest Park, partially buried in the dirt, in an area where children had been searching for eggs just moments earlier, they found what appeared to be a small human skull. Investigators arrived and cordoned off sections of the park with crime scene tape. Authorities later recovered additional remains and transported them to a forensic science center for examination. The focus turned to determining how long the remains had been there. Early reports suggested the remains may belong to a child, though identification was still underway at the time. Cases like this leave a lot of questions open while the process moves forward, and the people closest to it are left waiting for answers. Hopefully, those answers come soon. What do you think investigators will find once the examination is complete? A team of paranormal investigators from the YouTube channel Vlogs visited a haunted graveyard to explore and spend the night. While walking through the cemetery, they noticed something in the distance. A pale white figure standing completely still. Frightened, the team backed up and ran before anything else could happen. Some might say it was just a graveyard statue they hadn't noticed on the way in. But given where they were and what they came looking for, that explanation might be harder to accept. What do you think they actually saw out there? In July 2001, a 13-year-old Boy Scout named Cody Clausen became separated from his troop during a camping trip near Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. The group was staying at Camp Lol when Cody was helping carry supplies from a nearby parking area. At some point, he took a wrong turn and quickly lost his bearings in the dense wilderness. The further he walked trying to find his way back, the more lost he became. By the time anyone realized he was missing, a large search operation was already being organized. Rescue teams, volunteers, and aircraft began covering the rugged terrain. Cody was alone for more than 18 hours. He faced cold temperatures, rain, and at one point encountered nearby wildlife. To get through the night, he took shelter in a small cave. The next day, he remembered something from his Boy Scout training. Using his belt buckle, he reflected sunlight toward a helicopter passing overhead. The flash caught the pilot's attention. The helicopter moved in and spotted him. The pilot turned out to be actor Harrison Ford, who had been volunteering for search and rescue missions in the area. He helped locate Cody and brought him out of the wilderness safely. One small detail from a training manual ended up being the difference between staying lost and being found. What do you think would have happened if Cody hadn't remembered that technique? A group was hiking through the forest when they spotted something in the distance.
No. What?
They went quiet and started recording. The footage is blurry, but looking closely, a large upright figure can be seen moving between the trees. Some people view clips like this as possible evidence of an unknown creature. Others argue it could be a person or a known animal, misidentified under poor visibility conditions. Neither side has a clean answer. What do you think was moving through those trees? Someone was reviewing footage from a wildlife camera placed deep in a forest when something unusual appeared in the recording. At first, it looked like movement in the bushes, possibly an animal. But as the figure got closer to the camera, its shape became clearer. It looked like an old man. The person posted the footage to local groups. No one recognized him. Who was out there in the middle of the forest and why? Those questions still don't have answers. What do you think that figure actually was? A group of urban explorers came across a hidden cave deep in the woods. Curious and uneasy, they decided to go in. Inside, they found a tunnel system that appeared to stretch for miles. Scattered throughout were pieces of children's clothing. No one in the group had an explanation for how they got there. They pushed deeper into the tunnels. The further they went, the more disoriented they became. A feeling of being watched started to set in, though they couldn't identify a source. What they didn't know at the time was that something had already been captured on camera. In the footage, a figure can be seen standing in the darkness watching them, completely unnoticed while they were down there. The explorers made it out safely, but the questions didn't leave with them. Tunnels like that don't usually stay hidden without a reason, and clothing in that kind of place points to something that's hard to dismiss. What do you think was really down there watching them? A camper in the Appalachian Mountains posted footage from an evening at his campsite. As darkness settled in, strange sounds began echoing through the surrounding area. What seemed like a woman screaming and dogs barking somewhere in the distance. He scanned the darkness with his camera. Nothing was visible.
Mike.
The Appalachians have a well-known history of unexplained reports. But mountain lions and coyotes are both capable of producing calls that closely resemble human screaming. Whether that applies here is harder to say. What do you think was making those sounds out in the dark? According to a Reddit user, their roommate heard loud, clear crying sounds while staying at a friend's place in the middle of the woods. It happened twice, at the same time of night, with no obvious source nearby. What made it stranger was that the housing area had mostly male occupants, which left people questioning where such loud, human-like cries could be coming from. Some thought it might be a real person in distress. Others suggested a prank, or audio playing from a speaker somewhere nearby. The source of those sounds was never identified. What do you think was making those cries out in the woods? A hunter was going through trail camera footage recorded in a forest when something unusual appeared between the trees. A strange shape came into view. The darkness made it hard to see clearly, but whatever it was didn't look normal. Some believe it could be a known animal caught at the right angle, with light reflecting off its eyes. Others argue it doesn't resemble anything familiar. Trail cameras capture a lot of things that turn out to have simple explanations, but not every frame fits that pattern. What do you think showed up in that footage? On October 8, 1976, a 16-year-old student named Teresa Trinity Lynn Gibson was on a school field trip in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park when she disappeared. She was hiking with around 40 classmates, making her way back from a trail toward the parking area. At some point, she moved slightly ahead of the group. Witnesses later said she appeared to be in a hurry to get back. But when the rest of the students reached the bus, she was gone. Search efforts began almost immediately. Dozens of people, along with trained dogs, combed the mountains for days. Her scent was picked up along nearby trails, even leading toward a road, and then it stopped. No clear signs of what happened. Some believe she may have gotten lost in the wilderness. Others think she could have encountered someone on the trail. After decades, neither explanation has been confirmed. Cases like this leave a gap that's hard to close, especially when the trail goes cold so close to a road. What do you think happened to Teresa that day? TikTok user Eongan and a friend were exploring an abandoned nursing home when they decided to record the space for a video. After reviewing the footage, they realized something unexpected had been captured, something they hadn't noticed while they were inside. They went back with another friend to look for an explanation. What they encountered on that second visit left all three of them visibly shaken.
Crazy.
Whether there was another person inside, a squatter, or something else entirely, no one could say for certain. Some abandoned buildings do attract trespassers, and that alone can explain a lot. But the reaction of everyone present suggested this felt like more than that. What do you think was in there with them? A Reddit user was hiking alone with their dogs near a historical trail south of Athens, Georgia, along the Oconee River. They meant to take a photo but accidentally recorded a short video clip instead. When they reviewed the footage, they noticed something they hadn't caught in the moment. A strange noise audible briefly in the recording before it cuts out. The source was never identified, and the user was left unsettled by what they had unknowingly captured. Sounds that register on a microphone but go unnoticed in person don't always have a clear explanation. What do you think made that noise on the trail? Reddit user Cheap Category 4357 was exploring a remote, hard-to-reach area in the Uinta Mountains. He regularly seeks out unusual locations he finds on maps, and this one was particularly isolated, about a 15-minute drive from any main road, followed by a 5 to 10-minute hike past a closed gate. While moving off-trail, he came across something that didn't have an easy explanation. Under a tree was a scattered collection of around 20 school backpacks, along with clothing, jackets, socks, and underwear. Bottles of aspirin and other unidentified pills were on the ground. In nearby areas, there were signs that items had been burned. Everything was spread across the area as if it had been deliberately left behind rather than simply lost. The backpacks were mostly empty, containing only some papers and small debris. The location was too far from any stores to reach on foot and nearly impossible to access by car without serious off-road capability. It didn't match any typical campsite. After sharing the discovery, the user contacted authorities and was told the area is known as a crossing route for migrants. Others noted that the labeled medication, a variety of aspirin commonly found in Mexican packaging, could point to a connection with people passing through. Scenes like this tend to raise more questions than they answer, especially when the location itself makes ordinary explanations difficult to fit. What do you think was really going on out there? A man was hiking deeper into a forest when something ahead stopped him in his tracks. He spotted a strange figure with an oddly shaped head, looking downward as if focused on something on the ground. Then it straightened up. Its full height became visible, a tall, hunched body that didn't resemble any known animal. The man stayed completely still. After a few seconds, the figure looked away and kept moving. Whether it hadn't noticed him or simply chose to ignore him wasn't clear. Tall, hunched figures seen briefly in dense forest are hard to identify under any conditions, but this one's shape stood out enough to make the man stop and not continue. What do you think he was looking at out there? Late one night, a group of friends drove through a heavily wooded area with no real destination. They were just passing through. That changed when something stepped out from between the trees. The figure appeared directly in their path. It was large, covered in thick, matted, dark fur, and stood in a way that matched nothing they could identify. Something about the whole thing felt completely off. The driver reversed and left fast. Nobody stayed to look closer. Some suggested a bear with mange. Patchy fur can make an animal almost unrecognizable. But the man filming disagreed. He believed what stepped out of those trees was something else entirely. Not everyone who watched the footage was convinced by the bear theory. What do you think it was? A group of Boy Scouts were camping in the woods when strange noises began echoing from a nearby field late at night. At first, they assumed it was just an animal moving around. Then they picked up a camera. They started scanning the area to see what was out there. That's when they found it. Two bright, reflective eyes staring back at them from the dark. Something was crouched low in the tall grass, completely still, watching. Reflective eyes in the dark could point to any number of animals, but the way it held its position and kept watching is harder to explain. What do you think was crouched in that field? On a hiking trip in western Wyoming, a 13-year-old named Garrett Hunter became separated from his group while moving through a remote mountain area. The group was on a multi-day 50-mile hike in the Wind River Range near Pinedale, rugged and unforgiving terrain. Garrett was last seen around mid-morning as the group continued along the trail. When he didn't return, a large search operation was launched. Dozens of rescuers, volunteers, and K-9 teams spread across the mountainous terrain. Conditions were difficult. Concern grew with every passing hour. Garrett had some basic supplies, a sleeping bag, food, and a water filter. He was alone in the wilderness for nearly 2 days. Then, early Monday morning, searchers found him alive and in remarkably good condition. He stayed with rescuers until it was safe to bring him out. Even afterward, how he became separated in the first place was never fully explained. He had basic supplies and the right mindset to stay put. Both likely played a role in how this ended. But how does a boy simply vanish from a group mid-trail without anyone noticing? A field researcher known as Walla Walla Bigfoot on Reddit shared a witness video recorded in August 2024 near Jubilee Lake in the Blue Mountains of Oregon. The person who recorded the video described hearing unusual sounds coming from that location. They also noted that multiple other people had reported similar experiences in the same general area around that time. Commenters brought up mountain lions, bobcats, and other local wildlife. Recorded animal calls were compared directly to the footage. Nothing matched. What do you think was making that sound near Jubilee Lake? On August 20th, 2004, 12-year-old Garrett Bardsley was on a camping trip with his father and troop in the Uinta Mountains of Utah near Garrett Lake. The group had been fishing that morning. Then Garrett stepped away and never came back. Garrett's shoes and socks had gotten wet, so he headed back to camp to change. It was a short walk, about 100 yards. His father returned not long after, expecting to find him there, but Garrett was gone, and no one at the campsite had seen him come through. What followed was one of the largest search efforts ever conducted in that area. Hundreds of volunteers, search and rescue teams, helicopters, and tracking dogs worked through the rugged terrain for days. Nothing turned up. Investigators believed the most likely explanation was disorientation, that Garrett wandered into the dense wilderness and was overcome by it. The Uinta Mountains are remote and unforgiving. Steep terrain, thick forest, hidden drop-offs, and wildlife like black bears and mountain lions all make searches difficult. But the complete absence of evidence, especially that close to camp, left many people unsettled. Garrett was never found. His disappearance remains unsolved. 100 yards from camp with no trace left behind, no footprints, nothing, is the part that doesn't sit easily with a simple disorientation theory. What do you think happened to Garrett? A Reddit user named Wiretap Chocolate was exploring deep inside Eno River State Park in North Carolina when they came across something carved into a dead tree. Up close, it wasn't something easy to dismiss. The carving showed a female figure paired with a strange spiral pattern. It could have been personal artwork with no deeper meaning, but that combination has made others think twice. Similar patterns have appeared in symbolic and ritual contexts before. Carvings like this show up in remote areas more often than most people realize, and the intent behind them is rarely obvious. What do you think someone was trying to leave behind on that tree? A group of hikers were exploring a cave when they spotted something that stopped them cold. They started recording. The footage showed an enormous spider-like creature. One explanation offered was a large crab, possibly a coconut crab, but not everyone agreed. Some pointed to differences in the leg structure and the way it moved. Before anything could be confirmed, it crawled out of sight. Coconut crabs can reach surprising sizes, but the movement and leg structure in the footage didn't convince everyone. What do you think was in that cave? A Reddit user named Milad Hussein was hiking through a wooded area in Virginia when he stepped slightly off the main trail to find a campsite. He found something carved into a tree stump instead. The symbols looked deliberate. He posted them on Reddit asking if anyone recognized them. Commenters suggested Hobo symbols, a coded marking system used by traveling workers in the early 1900s to leave messages for each other along routes. Things like safe place, danger nearby, or food available. Some identified the specific carvings. The one on the left, shaped like a tic-tac-toe grid, meant unsafe. The one on the right, 2 arrows in a circle, meant get out fast. Both found just off a quiet forest trail. Hobo symbols are well documented, and those two carry some of the more serious warnings in the system. What do you think someone was trying to say on that trail? One night, a man was walking his dog through the forest when he heard what sounded like a child crying. He moved toward it, expecting to find someone who needed help. What he found wasn't a child.
Ay, Dios, Dios, Dios. ¿Qué es esto? Ay, Dios. Dios. Ay, ay, Dios. Chopi, vete. Vete.
Whatever was making that sound stopped him cold. Panic set in, and he ran. To this day, he has no explanation, only the certainty that it wasn't human. Some animals can produce sounds that closely mimic a human cry, but that answer hasn't settled things for him. What do you think was in those trees? In 1985, survival instructor Susan Purvis was leading a group of inner-city kids through an outdoor program in the Utah desert. She split from the main group with a teenage girl, taking what she thought was a shortcut. It wasn't. The two of them ended up lost, with darkness falling and rain moving in. Purvis grew frustrated as the situation worsened, and the girl, worn out, was in tears. Just when things looked their worst, they stumbled upon a primitive wiki-up shelter. They huddled inside and made it through the night. By the next day, rescuers found them after a 15-hour search. Both safe. Finding that shelter when they did made all the difference. But that kind of luck doesn't always come through. What do you think would have happened if it hadn't been there? A camper was setting up camp when something caught their attention hovering just above the tree line. They watched it. The longer they looked, the less sense it made. At first, they assumed it was a drone, but the way it moved didn't support that. The shape was unclear, and it didn't resemble any aircraft they could place. It made no sound. The woods were quiet, and there didn't appear to be anyone else around. They kept watching until it simply disappeared. The camper posted the footage to Facebook, but no one who saw it had answers. No identification, no explanation. Silent, unrecognizable, and gone without warning. Drones and known aircraft usually leave more to work with than this. What do you think was hovering above those trees? A young couple was on holiday in New Zealand's Bay of Plenty when the weather turned deadly. On January 22, 2026, record-breaking rainfall triggered a landslide at the base of Mount Maunganui, striking a beachside holiday park where people were camping. The slide hit without warning. Mud, rocks, and debris tore through tents, camper vans, and buildings, trapping people beneath the wreckage. Emergency crews rushed in, firefighters, police, sniffer dogs, and specialist teams, working through the unstable ground in the early hours. There were reports of voices coming from beneath the rubble. People were calling out. But conditions were extremely dangerous, and rescuers were forced to pull back at times due to the risk of further collapses. Authorities struggled to determine how many people were even missing. Some campers had already left the area without being accounted for. At one stage, at least 6 people were feared missing, including a child. In a separate nearby landslide, 2 people were confirmed dead after a home was destroyed. With shifting ground and limited access, some areas remained completely unreachable. Voices under the rubble, unstable ground, and no clear count of who was still missing. Every hour made the search harder. How many people do you think were still trapped beneath that slide? 3 girls were posing for a photo, smiling at the camera. The moment seemed completely ordinary. It wasn't until later that someone noticed something in the background. Behind them, barely visible at first, was a faint face, one that didn't belong to anyone in their group. Some believe it could be a trick of light or shadow. Others aren't so sure, pointing to the history of the location and wondering if what appeared in that photo could be connected to someone who once lost their life there. No one has been able to say for certain, The human eye is wired to find faces in random patterns, and light can do strange things in photos. But that explanation doesn't close the door for everyone. What do you think was standing behind those girls? On March 1st, 2026, a man working deep in the Appalachian Mountains stopped late at night to refuel his excavator in a remote clearing. He didn't expect anything unusual. Then the screaming started. The sound came from the trees, sudden and sharp. Before he could process it, it came again, louder and closer. He threw the gas can toward the darkness, rushed back into the excavator, and slammed the door shut. The recording ended shortly after. Whatever made that sound was never seen. Animals like foxes and mountain lions can produce startling screams, but the way it closed in fast is harder to explain away. What do you think was in that clearing? A trail camera owner returned to the woods to collect his device after leaving it overnight. The footage looked ordinary until he went through it frame by frame. In the first frame, a faint pale shape appeared at the edge of the image. In the next, it had moved further into view, and something about it was wrong. The proportions didn't match a human body, and the head was tilted to one side, showing a skull-like shape that some described as almost alien. Distorted trail cam images aren't unusual, but the proportions and head shape here were harder to dismiss. What do you think was moving through those woods? Years ago, a photographer named Leo Frank captured something unusual during a hike, and the image has been debated ever since. The figure appeared large, with Frank estimating its height at around 7 feet. Its overall appearance sat somewhere between human and something more primitive, leading some to connect it with folklore descriptions of wild men or Bigfoot-like beings. Others disagreed, arguing the proportions and facial structure looked too human for that explanation. The image doesn't confirm anything either way. A 7-foot figure with near-human features is exactly the kind of detail that keeps these discussions going. What do you think Leo Frank saw on that trail? A group was taking photos along the dark hedges near Armoy, Ireland, when something unexpected showed up in one of the shots, a faint figure visible along the path. Local legends describe a gray lady believed to be the spirit of a maid from a nearby estate who died under mysterious circumstances centuries ago. When photographer Kevin McCauley later reviewed the image, he found no clear signs of digital manipulation. That left two possibilities: a trick of light through the trees, or something that matched the legend exactly. Light and shadow can produce convincing shapes, but a clean image with no signs of editing is harder to dismiss. What do you think appeared on that path? Two tourists were preparing to climb Mount Everest when they received a warning that had nothing to do with weather or altitude. According to Nepali authorities, some climbers had allegedly been made ill during expeditions using food or medication, triggering symptoms serious enough to justify emergency evacuations. Once airlifted, they were billed through travel insurance at heavily inflated rates, with profits allegedly split among guides, pilots, and medical facilities. Between 2022 and 2025, thousands of tourists were reportedly treated at hospitals tied to these cases. Some climbers noted helicopters prioritizing those who could pay over those in critical condition. Arrests had been made, a rescue system being used as a financial scheme, and running for years before action was taken. How do you think it was allowed to go on for so long? A Reddit user was heading home from work when they filmed something unsettling. A mouse running in tight, frantic circles on the ground. The animal appeared completely disoriented, repeating the same loop for several minutes without stopping. The user suggested it could be a neurological issue or the result of poisoning, but watching it play out in real time was disturbing regardless of the cause. Some things have a straightforward explanation that still doesn't make them easier to watch. What do you think was wrong with that mouse? A group of scouts were inside a vehicle in a safari park when a massive tiger approached the back of their car.
It's trying to bite it out. Oh my god, it's screaming!
Without warning, it grabbed onto the rear bumper with its jaws and began pulling, trying to tear it away. The video ended shortly after, leaving the outcome unknown. What would make a tiger focus that intensely on a vehicle? And what do you think happened after the footage cut out? A hiker captured footage of the Malayan horned frog, found across Southeast Asia in Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore. The animal has horn-like projections above its eyes, but its most remarkable trait is its camouflage. On a forest floor covered in dead leaves, its skin blends in so completely it becomes nearly invisible. It waits without moving until insects, smaller frogs, or even small mammals come close enough to strike. An animal that can sit right in front of you and never be detected is unsettling in its own way. What do you find more fascinating, the way it looks, or the fact that you could walk past one without ever knowing it was there? On February 8, 1970, a 16-year-old Boy Scout named Jeffrey Haig was hiking with his group in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, making their way toward the newfound Gap parking area. He told the others to go ahead while he stopped to rest. It was the last time anyone saw him. When the group reached their destination, Jeffrey never arrived. Search efforts began quickly, with hundreds of rescuers, including trained teams and military personnel, combing the rugged terrain. Days later, searchers made a strange discovery. His belongings, pack and supplies, had been neatly placed on a rock in a shallow mountain stream. Not long after, his body was found less than half a mile away. Investigators determined Jeffrey had left the main trail and traveled downhill, likely trying to find his way out. He had moved through difficult terrain, possibly becoming disoriented, before succumbing to exposure in freezing conditions. Evidence suggested he had even attempted to climb back toward the trail, but never made it. The neatly placed belongings never had a clean explanation, even with an official ruling. What do you think happened to Jeffrey after he told his group to go ahead? That's all for tonight's video. Which encounter gave you chills? Let us know in the comments below. Got your own experience? We want to hear it. And whatever you do, don't miss what's coming next.